up afterwards and make stupid jokes about it, you know? Thank you so much.
Sure, thanks. Chabot College?
Yeah, hi. This is Nick from Chabot College. Thanks for having me through. Of course. You mentioned earlier that you're going to repitch, or almost repitch, your version of Attack of the Show. With that, do you plan on kind of incorporating more of like nerd culture or gamer culture into At Midnight, or do you kind of want to leave that stuff on the third issue and just have At Midnight do the comedy side? Well, I mean, you know, the way that we deliver information on At Midnight will always be different than Nerdist because they're just, you know, one's more newsy and one's more of a gamey, you know, like At Midnight is more of a game element and Nerdist is more of a lifestyle, pop culture, news delivery system. So I think in that sense they won't be the same, but yeah, I mean, you know, particularly around E3, we basically cover what we think, you know, the different spheres that we're looking at are talking about that day. So, you know, if it happens to be something slightly political, it'll be that. If it's celebrity culture that's popping, then it'll be that. If it's sports driven, it'll be that. If it's gamer culture, it'll be that. You know, but you know, there are definitely, I definitely think that there are trenches we can go down in the gaming community to as source material for the stuff that, you know, for the games on the show. But we're still a baby show. You know, we're still only really a month old. I mean, not counting the trial month that we did in October. So, you know, I feel like even though in some senses we'll go to a writers meeting every day and go, wow, how are we going to do this today? And we still find things, and it makes me happy to know that, you know, that we've essentially just nicked the tip of the glacier. You know, that underneath there's still so many levels deep we can go, and so many places we can go, and you know, gamer culture is certainly in that. I mean, I was a ridiculously hardcore gamer, and then I had quit gaming around the same time I quit drinking because it was an obsession that I had. And then like 4 years ago, I started again, and you know, and so I love games, and so you know, I definitely think that there are areas where you'll start to see it bleed into the show a bit more, but I think it'll be tied to game releases or like I said, E3 or like, you know, if there are video game awards or what, you know, it's all that stuff. So it's really where it kind of floats to the top of the chatter in pop culture is when we'll hit it the most. Okay, thank you very much.
Pace University? Hi, Chris.
Hello.
So, I previously listened to the Nerdist podcast like crazy and watched WebScoop. It's something my friends and I really like to do. So I wanted to know, like we were talking about, how much do you think other things you've done in life will influence how you'll take the show from here?
Oh, that's a good question. But more specifically, what are you thinking?
Well, you know, you've always been part of this big, you know, simple said, nerd culture. You know, when a lot of people hear your name, it's, you know, it's usually associated with things like this podcast. And so I just wanted to know, you know, do you think that's going to influence your show, or do you think that your show is just going to be showing a different part of you and what you like to do? Another answer to that.
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, I mean, I think both is probably an unsatisfactory answer, but I think it's both. I mean, the more comfortable you get with the show, the more of yourself comes out, you know. And I find that it's sort of like the development of your stand-up career, or my stand-up career, is that when you're first starting out doing stand-up, it's more about the external world, but then you start to run out of things in the external world to talk about, so then you just start going inward, and then it starts to become more of who you are. Like, if you listen to the podcast, I think you probably would notice over the last 4 years that the show's gotten more and more and more about who Matt, Jonah, and I are as people, as opposed to talking about the outside world. So that's just a natural progression. So I definitely think that, you know, if let's say we're on for years, then you'll see that happen on At Midnight. And I feel like it's already starting to happen a little bit, but it will get more and more and more and more and more personal for audience doesn't, they're just getting to know the show, so it wouldn't even really make sense for it to be super personal just yet. It's sort of like a journey you take with the audience. And yes, but the answer I think is eventually that will happen.
Okay. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you.
Rowan? Hi, Chris. This is Samantha.
Hello, Samantha.
Hi. I just had a question. How is hosting shows like Talking Dead and Talking Bad compared to filming at midnight?
Well, those shows are a lot less work because literally all I have to do is just watch a show I like and then talk about it. Like my work day for Talking Bad and Talking Dead was I would watch, I watch the show on a Sunday, like the Sunday that we do the show, and probably at like 2 o'clock, at 3 o'clock I'll go into the studio. Very leisurely have a run through of the show where we just make sure that all the graphical elements and the rolling packages are all in place, and then we go to dinner and then we do the show and it's live and then it's done. And that's it. And so, but at midnight is, every day building the show in the morning, rehearsing it in the afternoon, shooting it at night, the next day starting over. And so the workload is really, there's no comparison to the workload. But both shows represent different sides of who I am. Like at midnight represents, I think, who I am as a comedian and what my comedy voice is, and Talking Dead and Talking Bad represent, who I am as a fan of things. So, everyone is a complex mashup of a lot of different things and a lot of sides of their personality, and so those are just two shades of me, I guess. So, tonally they're different, and I think there was even a tonal difference between Talking Dead and Talking Bad. Talking Bad was a lot more somber because the show's a little more grounded, and it just felt like it, like Talking Dead is much more like pretty accessible in that show because it's awesome to watch zombie heads get run over and blow up, but Talking Bad really actually was, even though the premise of the show was pretty out there, it's like it was a very grounded show and pretty heavy, in that way. I mean, at least with Talking Dead, you get upset when you see horrible things happen, but you still feel a little bit of a disconnect between there are still zombies, so it's not real, it still feel a little safe. So they're all just different shades of stuff that I'm into. Just the same as like the bowling show that we do on the YouTube channel. Like I love bowling. My dad's a professional bowler, and so we do this bowling show. I mean, I feel like my whole career is just sort of a playpen of different areas of things that I love, and so I guess that's what I try to do.
Great, thank you. Santa Rosa?
Oh, hi, Chris. My name's Jared. G4, I was just wondering, were you kind of devastated when the channel got canceled? Like, I was a fan for like 10 years, and I was devastated.
Yeah, I mean, I was devastated, but not surprised because I left a year before G4 went under, and so it's funny, even when I got a job at G4, everyone always felt like we could get canceled at any minute. And so I worked there for 4 years, knowing that at the end of each calendar year, they could come by, that Comcast, now NBC Universal, could come in and go, hey, we're pulling all of your funding. And so all of the time that G4 was around, the staff would get whittled down, less writers, less producers, less field segments, less this, less that. So that by the time it happened, it was almost like kind of the death of a long illness. I mean, it's a lot of stuff that people didn't see externally, but was happening internally. So it was very sad, but on the other hand, there was also a sense of relief, and I was really happy to see a bunch of people that I cared about get the opportunity to go work on bigger things. Because G4, because of the falling out between Comcast and DirecTV, all of a sudden had a very small reach, and so all these people who were doing all these great things, it just wasn't being seen by that many people. And so I was very excited for all those people who were very talented to be able to go off and do other really great things, But it was very sad to me that, G4 was very, very special to me and to a lot of people. And I think a lot of what I'm trying to do in earnest is to recapture some of those elements of G4, be able to do things that G4 didn't have the flexibility to become because it, was weighed down by this giant company. And television is really tough to maintain a cable channel, but Nerdist is essentially a production company and a digital entity, so we have a lot more flexibility and freedom. Like, we do this Nerdist news show that's on 3 days a week, is run almost entirely by G4 people. Jessica Chilwell hosts it. Mike Shaw is a producer on it, and he was a segment producer on Attack of the Show, and he did Cobra Commander on Attack of the Show. Jerry Duggan, who also writes Deadpool, who also wrote for Talking Dead, he's a writer and producer for Nerdist and Nerdist News as well. So I use a lot of G4 people and makeup people. So it really is neat. Like, even if you heard what I said earlier about how I wanted to make my version of Attack of the Show, it's like I keep trying to do what I think G4 was not afforded the opportunity to do, and I hope I do it well. But it's just the soul of G4 was so good. So, I will keep trying.
Awesome.
University of Maryland?
Hi, Chris. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Great, thanks. Big fan. I'm a big fan. Sorry.
That's okay.
Quick question for you about the show, about how you get your material. What sort of sites do you look through to find your material for segments like that? I apologize.
Nope. Totally fine.
I stutter a bit. I apologize.
That's okay. And especially if you feel like on the spot, which you must feel like you're on the spot right now, but we have a bit of time, so you don't have to rush. We're totally good. So I feel like where you're going with this is where we get all of our material from. And honestly, it's the entire...
how do you decide what topics are trending enough to be featured in segments like Rapid Refresh, or the kinds of things where you have to take certain trends on Facebook or on Twitter or stuff like that?
Yeah, that's a good question. Basically, there are a lot of people who work on the show. We have 4 researchers and 7 writers, and there are producers. So I think it's really kind of our collective. This felt like it's. I mean, there's a couple different things we look at. It was something that people were talking about in social media. That's one element, and then is it something that we're interested in is another thing that we look at. And then we say, is it funny, which is another element. Are people reacting to it in a funny way? And then the last element is, do we think it's something that would tee up the comics to be really funny? Like a lot of times we'll say, okay, here's this topic that's trending, but is this just informational or is it actually funny? And so, we're not a real game show in the sense we're not trying to stump the comics. We're not trying to really test their knowledge of things. We're just trying to allow them to be as funny as they are in the way that they are. So I think, we really just go by feel. Does this feel like it would really, be funny and then allow the comics to be funny? Because ideally the way At Midnight works the best is that the structure of the show itself is just funny by itself. We found funny things online. And then on top of that, the icing is like, what do the comics add to that? And how do their interactions with each other, Are we making fun of each other? Are we having fun? Are we having a good time? It's like, the thing that I love about At Midnight is that it is technically works like a game show, but it also just feels like a hangout. Like the game show is just the wheel that drives the momentum of the content, but really it's an excuse to get a bunch of people that we're all friends to hang out and make jokes and make each other laugh. But I think you need the game show element of it so that the show doesn't go too off the rails with just 4 people cracking each other up. So I think it really has a nice balance. So I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's easy. Thanks.
University of Dayton. Hi, Chris. This is Mary Kate from the University of Dayton. Thanks for taking the time today.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
My question was, what has been one of your favorite moments on the show so far?
Well, we just did an episode of the show with two of the producers, Tom Lennon and Ben Garant. We're in a legendary sketch comedy troupe called The State. And The State was a sketch show on MTV in the 90s, right around the time that I started working at MTV. And so we essentially reunited almost all of them on one show, and we did it in a way that I thought was really fun and funny and sweet and reverent to the troupe. And so just kind of knowing that we have the ability to do that and reunite people, and particularly something that I was super geeked out over when I was a young comedy nerd. That to me was a really, really great moment of just looking around and seeing the cast all together. Like, I can't believe we were able to do this. So that's probably one of my favorite moments so far.
Awesome, great. Thank you so much.
Sure.
University of Suffolk.
Hi, Chris. How you doing today?
Hey, good. How are you?
Good. Actually, quite funny. My question is referencing that. You've had so many, just great, varied comedians on the show so far, and you just had the State reunion. Are there any other comedy troupe or group reunions that you'd like to try to have on the show in the future?
Well, it's funny you should ask. We're actually doing a UCB and Upright Citizens Brigade show next week with Matt Besser, Matt Walsh, and Ian Roberts. And I don't know if Amy Poehler is going to. I don't know if she's able to do anything on the show, but we'll have three of the founders of UCB, and then we're looking at cast too, like cast of shows, like can we go out and do a community themed episode and get three people from community? But it's like those are the kinds of things that we're shooting for. So because there are funny people out there who aren't necessarily stand-up. They're improvisers, they're comedy actors, they're musicians who are really funny, there are wrestlers who are really funny, and so it's really just about playing with these different combinations of people. And we're talking about maybe doing like a Full House reunion, and then they just did it on Fallon. So but those are the kinds of things that we're looking at. So yes, the answer is we are exploring as many of those combinations as possible.
Oh, wow. Thank you very much. I'm just a huge fan and really appreciate your time to do this.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks.
Boise State.
Hi, Chris. How you doing? This is Ryan from Boise State. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. I just wanted to talk a little bit about, I've always been a really big fan of the freedom that there is in comedy. And as a comedian, how do you view kind of the lack of credibility there is in certain media affiliates, I guess, in regards to media bias and things like that? How do you view the freedom you have as a comedian to kind of delve into talk about pretty much anything that you feel as opposed to certain media affiliates that they kind of run on an agenda?
Well, I think comedians have. In theory, comedians have 100%. In theory, everyone has 100% freedom, right? You can really say whatever you want. It's just, are you willing to deal with the consequences of those actions? You really can say anything you want, but you have to think, well, but what are the consequences? Because legally, comedians can say whatever they want because we have freedom of speech, but socially, comedians cannot say whatever they want unless they are willing to deal with the consequences. So I think society really sort of keeps that in check, I'm sure you've seen a million times. The comic said something on stage that offended a bunch of people. I think the thing that we have to be very careful of is that, I think our culture seems to be addicted to being outraged at things sometimes, and sometimes something can spread like wildfire on the internet. And I think I know I've seen a lot of people commenting on a situation that they were actually not present for or don't have a lot of details of, just because they read a headline and it sounds like they should be mad, and so they express rage. So, I personally, there are definitely topics that I would never go near on stage because I know it would bump people out. So why would I want to bump people out? I'm a comic, I want to make people feel. I personally, some people think as a comic, that you gotta go light fires, and I think a certain amount of fire lighting is fine, but I want people to feel good. I like when people feel good. So, it's a tough question to answer because I feel like,
in theory, we all have 100% freedom, but there's a sliding scale of what consequences are you willing to deal with in order to express, I mean, if I feel like I have a really strong point about something, even though it may not be popular, but I still feel like it's really important to make that point, I'll make that point, and then if anyone challenges me on it, I'll say, well, here are a series of reasons why this was important to me, and hopefully we can have a mature discussion about it. But, I wouldn't just make a joke at someone else's expense, and if someone said I'm offended, I'd go, well, that's too bad. I would say, well, what did I really get out of this joke, and who is it really attacking? Comedy really should be about subverting power and dealing with tragedy as opposed to picking on people who are weak, who are weaker in a situation. So I don't even really have a definite answer. It's sort of, I'm sure I'm sure you have a sense of like, well, I'll kind of stay within these bounds when I'm writing so that no one shows up with torches and pitchforks and and demands my head. I think there's just as much societal pressure as there is like professional or legal pressure for anything like that.
Well, great. Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks again for sitting down and talking with all of us.
Yeah, sure, no problem. Thanks.
Thanks.
The University of Albany. Hi, Chris. Stan.
Hello.
I've been here for years. I love the show. It's like the closest thing America has to the good old-fashioned British panel stuff.
Yeah, that's really the soul of it. That's what we said. Most Americans don't really understand what a British panel show is, but for the comedy nerds who do, we don't really have anything like that here, and they're so popular in England. So I was just excited to help reintroduce this format to the States.
Yeah, definitely. And I was just wondering if people like Greg and Buck thought about growing up in a time when nerd culture wasn't really accepted by the public, but now there's a shift where the public seems to love nerds, this like big bag theory, they were like the most mode. And I was wondering what thought this meant for this industry in general, comedians and nerds in general.
Well, I definitely still think, even though as much as I think we're an accepted sliver of pop culture, we're still not all of pop culture, I sort of, when people say, if someone says like, oh, nerds have taken over pop culture, I was like, I don't think they've taken over pop culture. I think they've just made room to exist alongside the Kardashian culture.
Oh, God.
Yeah, so, there's good and bad things about that. Some, like, really, really hardcore nerd purists, really, there's a lot of tribalism within nerd culture, which I think is bad, but I think it just comes from a place of, someone feeling very personal about something and then seeing a new crowd of people come over and then just getting protective because they've been hurt, And so, but I think ultimately we should be accepting in the way that we want people to accept us for the things we believe in. So, it's a delicate balance, and ultimately you're never going to make anyone happy, and ultimately there are some people that no matter what you do, they're going to tell you you're not nerdy enough for them, or how could you not, or your opinions are dumb, or they try to, they try to attack you with more knowledge than you have, which is sort of a nerd mutant power. And, but I think we're better off now than we were when I was growing up, for sure. Just being able to be more, like Comic-Cons were really like dirty basements, like they were not places that people really openly talked about in pop culture, and now Comic-Cons are really more pop culture cons, and they're about celebration and fandom, and, we get really big movies made by super nerdy dudes like, Joss Whedon. So I think it's good. I think ultimately the good things are way better than the bad things.
Thank you.
Thanks.
The University of Baltimore?
Hello.
Hi, Chris. This is Steph from the University of Baltimore. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm great. I've actually been a fan of yours since back in the Single It Out era when MTV actually used to play music videos.
People back then, people said we did these stuff like music videos too, so they've always said that.
more than they do now. I kind of miss.
I agree. Yeah, I agree.
Between shows and that kind of thing. So, anyway, you've had a very, very decently long career at this point. So, I guess my question is, what's the best moment for you of your career to date?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. That's a good question to answer. I mean, I get to do so many things that it's still kind of strange that I get to do and call a job too. I mean, like, just aside from the fact that I just get to do these amazing things that are fun, it's also part of my job. So, I don't know. I mean, I don't. As far as a career, a career isn't really like one moment. It's really just a collection of things. So, you know, it's people we've podcasted or experiences I've had at all age at Comic-Con, or it's, you know, getting to go to a job like at midnight or Talking Dead, or being on the set of The Walking Dead and having the prop guy give me one of Rick's badges. I mean, like, there are a million things that any one of those things I would be over the moon about, and, you know, I'm lucky enough that I have a lot of those moments. So I guess it's not really, I guess it's really the period of time between 2007 and now. 2007 is when I decided to just start pursuing and working on things that I cared about. So that's when I started working for Wired Magazine, and that's when I started working for G4. That's when I started, you know, Nerdist in 2008. So it's really, I would say it's really this time period from 2007 to present that is a career high for me, because I've been doing this stuff since 1994. So I can really kind of look at my career in periods, like a geological record. And so, you know, this is a good one right now.
Well, I'm glad to hear that you're happy with where you are, and I wish you luck in the future.
Thank you very much.
The UNC Charlotte? Hi, I have been watching a few episodes lately. I really like the segment you have for Hashtag Wars. And I was just wondering if any of your favorites is watching and started trending on Twitter, and they're getting responses, you know, even past the show. I was just wondering if any of those, you know, had a big response that you really liked.
You mean, am I excited about the response to Hashtag Wars overall, or are there specific jokes that I've liked?
Specific trends. Like specific jokes.
Oh, well, yeah, I don't think any of us expected that Hashtag Wars was going to trend every single night. We didn't really expect that. So, just seeing, like, I'll tell you what I love is, if we're playing a game and someone basically makes a joke out of a company's name, and then that company responds with their own joke, you know, like, Clorox responded to us once, I think Ronnie responded to us, Wingstop, like all these companies, seeing their willingness to play along, that's kind of fun too, because, you know, Hashtag Wars feels like this little thing that we are doing in our friend's bedroom. It's like, oh, it's us, it's for us, it's us, like our comedian friends. But then when you see like these big companies come in and jump on board and play along, you kind of feel like, oh, this is way bigger than we thought it was, you know? But so many of the responses are great, and it's always fun to see ones that you never thought of, you know, or to see people that thought of the same one that you thought of, and then you go, oh, I like that person, and we had the same idea. Like, I don't know, it's fun that, like, the social experiment element of it is fun for me.
Thanks. West Virginia?
Hey Chris, this is Wesley from West Virginia. I'm a huge fan. I was wondering, so, seems to be technology is coming together these days. Your show is drawing content from the internet. You guys like to talk about and just put it back on the internet. You're streaming online, you put it on Twitter. Where do you see technology just kind of merging everything together? Where do you see like, entertainment going in the future?
Well, you know, there's definitely people are more mobile than they were before, and you know, who knows if Google Glass will be a trend that catches on and people are actually watching things in visors. But I think ultimately, this, you know, television is having to kind of make room for the way that people interact with content digitally. I mean, it's funny to say digitally because television's digital now, but I mean, when I say digitally, I basically mean internetally. So I think ultimately what I see happening is that it will all hinge around hardware that will merge these two things in a very easy and intuitive way, much in the same way that, cable boxes brought easy access to a lot of channels, or much in the same way that, even for podcasting didn't really start to become a thing until iTunes made it, brought, gave people a delivery system that was easy and a platform that was, seamless. And so when you're starting to see that now, obviously a lot of the gaming platforms are media platforms. And so when you start to see a device that makes all of the digital content side by side with all of the traditional media content, then it'll be, one thing won't be discernible from another thing just in terms of how it's delivered. And that's where brands will really, and apps will really be what people will go after as opposed to a channel. Like, I think apps are the new channel. So you wouldn't necessarily go to CBS to watch Big Bang Theory. You might go to either the CBS app or the Big Bang Theory app, which maybe was paired with a bunch of much in the same way that they used to bundle cable channels, but just more, maybe we're really ultimately going to become Minority Report. But I think, it really is just about the hardware catching up with the way that the trends of the way that people are consuming their content.
Thank you very much. Great answer.
All right, everybody, that is a wrap. Thanks so much to Chris for his time, and as a reminder, cc.com/press. You can find images and other assets. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Allison.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.